There's somebody on campus who actively campaigns against people like Naeem Akbar, who used to be at Morehouse College, used to be the chairperson of the psychology department. Naeem Akbar spoke that day at a Crown Forum, so those white people from Providence actually saw what was coming, you know, from in terms of my class. They heard Naeem Akbar talking, so it's like, well, they ain't gonna be too uncomfortable. Was my concern. But the issue is that this white man on campus actively campaigns against people that have so-called revolutionary ideas at a black school. So the whole thing you said about the Negro institution, the Negro mentalities. So my issue is, I don't have any support. So I'm not really going to put myself out to the point where I'm now cut, but I'm going to be as tactful as possible to deal with the issue. So that same person that may be criticizing ain't even reading the book. But that's the nature of power. They ain't got to read the book. They can cut you off somewhere. So we got to put it in, again, terms that our people can understand, also to a level of sophistication that also can be, you know, dealt with from the outside. But the main concern, like I said, for me, and the reason I wrote the book, is to somehow clear up some of the misinterpretations. Also, now, like I said, it's not the last or first book, but it's a matter of now presenting some information from, in my opinion, a more clear perspective. Questions?
I would like to know some of the, beyond the whole issue of superiority, inferiority, just some of the things that melanin does for us as a people that allows us to do some things that maybe whites can't do, and then vice versa. You know, what are some of the things that whites, when I say can do, I mean genetically, you know, speaking.
Genetically?
I mean, what is it, me being a dark-skinned person, melanated person, you know, that I might have an advantage over, per se, you know, a white person?
I would focus on the physical, you know, the psychomotor, not so much the genetic things.
Okay.
Because the things that you can see through evidence in terms of, again, movements. You know as well as I do, in terms of basketball, there ain't nobody plays basketball like Michael Jordan.
Right, but that's a physical thing.
Right, but I can't focus that on just genetics, you know.
Okay.
I would look at what the manifestations of it are in terms of the biology. The manifestations come on the physical level. And then with the music, and the whole thing about the drum. And you had the drum on earlier, we're not playing it now, but the drum just ties in, just brings it all together. And the whole thing about during slavery time is they banned that drum. You know, in my slide presentation, the first cartoon I got on there is a white man tripping over a net with the people in the background, and they got a light, not really black people, they're like brown colored people, don't even look African, but they're playing the drum. White man can't deal with that. But there's some rhythm in it, and there's something to do with, again, maybe our physiological apparatus that helps us deal with that information.
I think since I've talked so much, I'll let Brother Willicks ask his question, and I'll come back.
I was just going to say that, you know, a lot of that, you know, like the whole rhythm, you know, you have to get into like right brain, left brain type of functionality when you're considering, you know, based upon the theories that I'm coming from, the cultural differences between blacks and whites have to do with the way we perceive the world through, you know, either a right brain or a left brain. And, you know, all the scientific research that's coming out today is showing that the right brain functionality is superior to left brain functionality. And black people are more right brain. That's where all that rhythm, that holistic type of communal type of attitude, et cetera, comes from. Left brain is that segregative, you know, that, you know, they can see, all they see is the separation. They don't see a community of people, they just see a community of individuals, et cetera, et cetera. And that led to the development of the two divergent cultures and the mentality, the mindset, you know, that they have, that they can, you know, separate, the idea that a child within a woman is not a human being, because it's a very segregative type of thinking to be able to isolate and alienate, you know, two, you know, live creatures. You know, that's just that type of polarization that led to the development of different cultures. And the problems that we have today as black people is that, you know, superimposed upon our normal mode of functioning is a left brain mentality, a left brain society, you know, left brain approach to dealing with our problems, you know, as far as relationships, you know, the way we relate, you know, trying to explain, you know, how Michael Jordan does that, you know, it's all in the rhythm, but that rhythm comes from that whole right brain functionality. How does melanin affect right brain, left brain functionality?
He sounds like you read Shake 'em, Shake 'em, Round Whenever I'm In, Metal Netter?
Yeah.
Okay. He, the head of the Osara Set Society, put out a document, I think volume 1, I don't know if Doug has it in here, All right, volume 1, I haven't read volume 2. But he emphasizes the thing about the cultural differences are extending from, again, the way that the brain functions. I don't need to repeat what you just said, but to emphasize the things about left brain, right brain. Then we start to get into the differences in people rather than focusing on one chemical, okay? So if we kind of now take it to that other level of the brain and psychology, which the chemists will not know or express in a fluent fashion, I think that's where we need to focus on. When we start talking about the left brain, start talking about what we do to master so-called standardized exams. Yeah, white people can do that, and that's why I like to be a devil's advocate again and talk about the superiority stuff, because then they'll say they're superior. See, our left brains work better than you. The whole thing for us is not to get into left or right. You need the whole damn brain to function, okay? So, excuse the word, damn, whatever, right? The thing about the melanin is it's found in certain regions of the brain, not the entire, say the entire brain because there's some color to it, but in terms of the functioning of the locus ceruleus, the raphe nucleus, the substantia nigra, places where what? Neurotransmitters are being produced. In terms of what we did as an African people, by building pyramids, by making sphinx, by building and being in tune to the environment, that has a lot to do with the way people were thinking. Today, we don't do that. In the past, there wasn't no radios, there weren't no TVs. What were you tuning into? The divine universal consciousness.
And there were no white folks.
All right, wasn't no white folks. And today, the issue is we have external information. The radio telling us what to think, TV telling us a vision. All these other issues going on, not causing you to now master both sides of your brain. But I wouldn't necessarily say is now, some people may. I think brother who wrote African Holistic Health, Loyola Africa, he makes reference to the melanin causing both sides of the brain to function. I wouldn't do that only because I know the certain parts of the brain that have the melanin. I would focus on the way that the chemicals are being released to make the brain function in a certain way. But the thing is, you're correct about, again, now distinguishing brain sides, hemispheres, which cause the person to think in a certain way.
I'd like to address again the fact that there has to be something about melanin. And the reason I say that is because if you take a white person and you take a black person and you just happen to let them cohabitate, make love, have a child, whatever it is that you want to say, that child is going to look more like a black person than a white person. I've seen it all too many times. And if you do it enough, that white person is going to disappear until, bang, here he is again.
Genetic survival.
Genetic survival. So my very base biology class in high school told me that brown eyes, black hair is a dominant gene. Those things have melanin. That's where the melanin, you recognize melanin. Brown eyes, black hair, and evidently the melanocytes in the skin. That says that there's something wrong there with that white person with blonde hair and blue eyes, since it is a recessive gene.
Okay, and maybe make this statement right here to kind of get you to think a little bit more about it, because I feel what you're saying, you know, but the science kind of makes me stand on another so-called pedestal. Why? Because in the brain, the melanin is usually similar. Even though a person may be white, even if a person is albino, compared to a black person, the brain melanin, or the part that produces behavior, is almost comparable. So it's hard to make the leap from the skin stuff to then actually behavior. However, you're on target by focusing on the genetic stuff, and that's why I have in think chapter, 2, talking about the biology of blackness, talking about the very beginning where you find melanin going on, is to produce the nervous system. So from the very beginning, and then when you start talking about the other chapter on early childhood development, and why our kids, my first child came out the womb looking up. Most white babies, you know, they ain't moving. They don't have that same internal physical mechanism because the system's not as advanced or developed. I wouldn't say superior, but advanced or developed. Well, so that's what I would do. So hopefully I would do that, Doug, to kind of get you to think a little more about, well, wow, if the brain melanin is almost the same in terms of albino, or white person, black person, we can't make too much of a leap.
Is it really this about? Well, see, you're saying about the same.
Right.
So that means that it is not the same, but
Right.
it is similar.
That's why I focus on in the introduction and throughout the book is the greater possibility or potential you have of making melanin, the greater it is for your melanin to function at a higher level. So certainly there may be some differences, but when you start, all white people can walk. There's some white people who play basketball and dance.
They can't jump, though.
Historical record, several thousand years will attest to that.
Well, I don't think I would even deny anything you said. I wouldn't even attempt to be in a position to try to refute it. So I would also kind of want to see how are you feeling the way that I'm presenting it? I wouldn't deny any of that. I think that the way I even present it, in terms of talking about the advantages of having it, what it does, where it is in the body, and what it can do, I don't think I would be hesitant to kind of believe that, because I do read the other documents that relate to our African history, but I'm trying to, because there's been several questions from certain angles to kind of say that, well, you don't really believe that.
I think what's happening here too is, for instance, Francis Welsing and Richard King and Carol Barnes and all, these were some of the quote-unquote black pioneers in the mind sciences, in any sciences, to come out and start dealing with melanin and see and all come to a consensus that because we had it, that we were, to an appreciable degree, operating on a higher level than people who didn't have it. Now, this gave us a necessary high. We needed that boost.
Okay.
So what's happening is you're coming in from a cold scientific approach. And what it sounds like you're saying is, hey, look, don't use this melanin argument to try to see who's good and who's bad, all right? And what it comes off is saying, hey, you know, you're throwing some blows at some heroes of ours that have really given us some shots in the arm. So we're going to stand in their defense because they're not here. Now, we appreciate your science, but we're not going to throw them away and say that melanin is really not one of the keys to black greatness, because without it, we would be white folks, and we got the historical record to show what that would do.
You get a chance to read the first chapter, though, in terms of my critique?
I must say I haven't read any of it.
All right. Because like I said,
not that I'm not going, I will.
All right, because like I said, I'm not downing my people.
Right.
And I didn't want to be used by the media to be an antagonist, as you said. You know, everybody stand up.
That's why I brought that up to say this is the feeling, because I feel that. I know better, but still I can't deny
And you know what the
that
other
I'm
thing
on
is?
that.
Even within my verbal presentation, that's what I'm saying was a problem with some of the other verbal presentations. Not understanding what I'm saying. Not saying you don't understand what I'm saying, but what I may really want to say and what is actually in a document and written down. So I'm not refuting. Dr. King has been a leading warrior on talking about the eye of Heru in terms of what you got on the window there. He's documenting all these scientific principles and cultural things coming from our people. I'm not going to deny that. And I don't state that in the book that I deny it. I just don't want to fall into the trap that a lot of our scholars have in the past fallen into. So I will come from, I guess, the cold scientific approach to stand firm on these principles that I think that are being very convoluted.
And at the same time, understanding what you're saying, because you were saying we're all white people now. Because right now, in this age of diversity, as it's been created by the CIA et al., all right? In this age of cultural diversity, multicultural diversity, you know, we don't want to say that anybody has an advantage or anybody is superior. You want to forget that, because white folks done squeezed all the juice out of that, so to speak. All right, so we don't want to say that, but I think we still going to have to look at it in that respect, and don't let this information cause us to forget the admonition that Chancellor Williams left, and that was from the documented history that the white man is your bitter enemy. Right. Don't forget that.
Yeah, and I don't think I emphasized that throughout the document. I only made a statement in the front that I wasn't concerned about how they felt about the issue. And that's why I'm not even concerned about the faculty in supporting me with my concerns, because they're not who I'm really, they're like the pawns that are part of the problem. So that's not even who I'm writing it for, but it's for the people that need to kind of digest the information. So the whole issue about, again, focusing on the enemy and knowing who the enemy is, I don't want you to think that I don't know, I don't understand, but just to put it out there, and I think I may.
In some kind of way, you got to weave that in there, brother.
And I think that's why I think through the dialogue, and this is just the first one now. I mean, like I said, I thank Doug and Regina for even giving me the opportunity to come here and speak. And that's what I'm saying, I've been waiting for the people to read this stuff, because I've been talking about it for a year and ain't no book. Now people got it and ain't got past introduction, you know? Well, after they, not all the people, but most of the people that I may communicate and converse with, they're not really digging into what I'm trying to say. So I think that hopefully from the dialogue that's in the book, we can now have hopefully a more clear dialogue. You know?
I have a question based on, I guess, amongst African people. Do they produce any level at all of melanin? Because from my understanding, if you take two albino Africans and they got together and produced an offspring, the offspring would have some melanin. Wouldn't they? Or would they not?
So genetically speaking, that can
So,
occur.
What's up with that?
Well, when we want to focus on, and I'm not a geneticist, okay, but when we focus on the creation of albinos and the appearance that they have, yes, they can mix and make people of color, but the point is, within that person, there's nothing on the outside. But when we start talking about the creation of melanin and the actual derivation of it, what's in the brain may not be forming the same thing as what's in the skin.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking, you know, as far as
Different.
it should be something existing somewhere in the body, whether it be the brain or something, for them to be able to produce.
It's the genetic blueprint.
Okay, right.
But the thing is, even within the brain, that brain melanin is being produced in a different format than what we have in the skin. And let's look at the brother Yellow Man. Albino, but he's got some rhythm in him.
Right.
He's got some soul in him. So we don't want to fall in the trap just because you ain't got the melanin, you ain't got the soul. That's why I'm saying that.
Blues.
No,
Had they not been exposed to it,
I don't know that.
because we see like out of Europe what came out of this, you know, Chopin, you know, Walt, you know, that type of, you know, real, you know, staccato type of music, you know, it can be, you know, you can work with it, but it's still very mechanical in the way it's generated.
Okay, and the whole thing there, as I try to emphasize again, everybody can move to a level, but it's the African that's going to move to a level that's going to be dealing with this energy system, what's pervading the universe. We can move to a higher level. So certainly others can now piggyback and do the same things that we do, but they ain't going to do it the same way. So I understand your point trying to relate it to that.
I don't know for certain, did Bach come before Chopin, or did Chopin come after Bach? Because, you know, that was an African.
Did Bach come before Chopin or Chopin come before
So,
Bach?
you know, where did they get that from? Within, out of the European experience with music,
Yeah.
there's a lot of blacks there that were actually doing the music and that they were following behind too.
Beethoven even, right?
Right, yeah, they were just taking off on what we were laying as a foundation.
All the way up to Wynton Marsalis today. So, I mean, the evidence is there where we can even now take theirs to a higher level. So, yes, there's some differences, and that's my whole thing. Not to just talk about everybody the same, put everybody in the same little bowl. Nah, let's look at the differences. I would say acknowledge the differences. Accept them, rather than focusing on, well, who's superior, who's inferior. But by talking about why the Europe, because the whole thing about, you know, with the European, they say them big legs and, you know, flat butts, they can stay on ice much better than us, you know?
Yeah, go ahead.
And in terms of us running all these track races, man, we built the big gazelles, you know, running. So just in terms of the body types, we'll just respect it, but not talk about now somebody's superior because they doing something.
We are superior, and that is at the core. That is at the core of his racism.
But then,
Because given you know, equal opportunity, there's not too many areas that he can best us in. You know, whether it's the sciences, because we gave him the sciences to begin with. You know, he's just taking it to you know, a certain degree. But anything, you just think of anything. You know, and right now the only thing that he's got over us is economics. You know,
Yeah.
but the one brother that went up and became a billionaire, according to his terms, they took him out. You know, because if he did it and other blacks see that he can do it, then we start thinking, well, we can do it. And then we take over his whole power base and he has nothing left. And the last thing that he can work at is his little radionics, which is electronic juju. That's his next frontier that he's trying to exploit before we get back into it, you know, so he can still maintain power on that level.
Until the magnetic poles shift, and that's going to wipe it all out.
One thing is, I know we talked about this
It's over.
This physical plane of resistance we're talking about. To me, this is, you know, I know all the history and all that, but to me, that really doesn't matter much anymore to me. I want to get into like the spiritual aspect, and I know, you know, there's only certain things you can do here, and we understand that, you know, they can hold that. But on the spiritual plane, there's no equal. I mean, I think we have to get more into that and deal with that.
Well, that's why I said I put the chapter in the material spiritual connection rather than coming with the cold science, as Brother Tim said. Well, I kind of threw something in it that dealt with, again, our spiritual
We got to deal
component.
with that. Don't get me wrong. We got to deal with that.
All
But
right.
the reason I say cold science, you know, it's clearly objective. We want to make it as objective as possible, because in the other scientists were injecting a lot of subjective things in there. All right. So, but I mean, we got to deal with the cold sciences. I mean, analysis, technicality.
Okay.
You know.
All right, well, hopefully after reading it, you'll see that I'm trying to tackle all those angles, and that's why I think that's why I'm excited about having it out there, because there are many people that would like to read it, different perspectives. Chandler?
Well, I just was going to mention earlier, when you're talking about superiority, it's a big leap to put something out to people who have had it beat in them for generations that they're inferior, that now they're superior. They're not going to absorb. I mean, just the static I get from just talking to somebody about something positive and black, well, why can't it be everybody? You know, that's what I think is important in staying away from the superiority. There are so many of our people that will run from that. I mean, will run from even, and if you go back a generation, run from the concept of being equal. We gotta take this thing and look at it and take it a step at a time. We had black folks fighting equality 30 years ago too, and some of them around now, championing it.
And then if you
We've
want-
been much better off if
you
we
want
would
the
all fought it.
The superiority issue to the maximum level, we deal with the spiritual. Well, we top them out in the spiritual level, but on top of that is, the most superior spiritual being is the black woman. So that's going to rock a whole lot of boats when the news comes out about that, just black egos.
If you look at the stand already had told there's no movies like that. It's already shown.
We're going to take one more question because there are folks that have to get out of here. I understand that. And,
The statement in his question is a topic of self-esteem and self-image and being at peace is the second thing. If your self-image is not strong, you're not at peace, you being superior, inferior wouldn't be an issue. You could take the information and use it. And it being at peace spiritually and having a good self-esteem is causing one to have superiority with people who are actually reaching for peace. And that's some of the reason why when you come cold, they say, well, are you telling me you feel good about it, or are you telling me if it's true? And that's where the question comes in, and they may reject it and run from it because they're not at peace and self-esteem has a topic with us.
And to be honest, some of the people that maybe think that white ice is colder than black ice, they might not even be able to keep up anyway. You know what I mean? But just in terms of us then leading them to at least to find out that all ice is ice, I don't think we should have too much of a problem. So, Tim?
I wanted to ask you this. It was relevant, more relevant, I think, when you were talking about the bell curve earlier. Would you please define intelligence?
It's a term that is reified. I don't need to take you out of the classroom since we're trying to get out of here. But reify means to make something real that don't exist. There's no definition of intelligence. Intelligence could be how fast you sit down in the chair, how quick you turn off the light. It's something that the European has defined in terms of this left brain mentality stuff because that's what they emphasize, that's what they're better at. Now they got us thinking like them, therefore we get into this whole debate of intelligence. In actuality, the person who's got this PhD, MD, law degree, can go out and get robbed, and what the hell is this thing about intelligence? You're so smart. So
That's why I asked that question. Say, there's something that doesn't exist.
Right.
How can it be quantified and come up with a quotient?
well, that's the white man's science.
But I'm saying we debate it.
Called the Science of Oppression. Jay Corrupt.
All right, well, I thank you for your time, first of all. And I appreciate the dialogue and the concerns and the issues, because this is really something that's for us and our people, and we can't just sweep it under the rug, but really talk about it.
Thank you.
All right, Brother Dove.